For 600 years, the Ottoman Empire was the most powerful state between Europe and Asia. It conquered Constantinople. It threatened the gates of Vienna. It controlled the trade routes that connected East and West. And then it borrowed money from European banks to fight European wars. And the banks won. The Ottoman Empire didn't fall to a military conqueror. No single battle ended 600 years of power. The Ottoman Empire fell to something far more patient, far more invisible: debt. And the story of how the most powerful Islamic empire in history was brought to its knees by European creditors is one of the most important and least told stories in financial history. But to understand the Ottoman financial collapse, you have to understand what made the Ottoman Empire extraordinary in the first place. Because this was not a weak empire that stumbled. This was one of the most sophisticated states in human history, at its peak. At its height in the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire stretched from Algeria to Baghdad, from the Danube to the Persian Gulf, from the Crimea to the Red Sea. It controlled the most valuable trade routes on earth: the overland Silk Road, the spice routes, the Mediterranean sea lanes. Constantinople, modern Istanbul, was the richest city in the world. The Ottoman state was a sophisticated bureaucratic machine: tax collection, infrastructure, military logistics, legal systems. The Janissaries, the Ottoman professional army, were among the most feared military forces in history. And for 200 years, the Ottoman Empire expanded almost without pause. But expansion is expensive, and in the 18th century, the expansion began to reverse. Wars with Russia, wars with Austria, wars with Persia. Each war cost more than the last, and the Ottoman treasury began to strain. Here is the moment that changed everything. In 1055, the Ottoman Empire did something it had never done before in its 400-year history. It borrowed money from foreign banks. For the first time, the Crimean War against Russia was bankrupting the Ottoman treasury. So in 1850, the empire turned to British and French banks for the first time. The initial loan seemed manageable, but wars don't end cleanly, and once the borrowing began, it never stopped. Between 1854 and 1855, the Ottoman Empire borrowed the equivalent of billions of dollars from European creditors. Each loan came with interest that had to be paid in gold, not in Ottoman paper currency. And each new war, and there were many, required new loans to fight the wars and to pay the interest on the loans from the last war. By 1855, the Ottoman Empire was spending more than 50% of its entire budget on debt service, more than on its army, more than on administration, more than on anything else. And on October 6, 1870, Grand Vizier Mahmud Nedim Pasha made an announcement that shocked the financial world. The Ottoman Empire was suspending payment on its foreign debt. Default. The most powerful Islamic state in history could not pay its bills. And what happened next was something no sovereign state had ever experienced before. Its creditors took control, not of its military, not of its territory, of its finances. In May 2018, 6 years after the default, the Ottoman Empire was forced to accept the creation of the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, a body run by European creditors: French, British, German, Austrian, Italian. Ottoman Public Debt Administration, a body run by European creditors: French, British, German, Austrian, Italian. Ottoman state. The debt administration took direct control of specific Ottoman revenue streams: tobacco taxes, salt taxes, stamp duties, fish market revenues, silk taxes. These revenues went directly to the European creditors before they could be used for anything else, before paying Ottoman soldiers, before building Ottoman roads, before funding Ottoman schools. The empire that had once threatened the gates of Vienna was now financially supervised by the descendants of the people it had threatened, and the consequences were profound. With its revenue streams diverted, the Ottoman state could no longer adequately fund its military, could no longer maintain its infrastructure, could no longer project the power that had sustained its empire for 6 centuries. When World War I began in 1914, the Ottomans allied with Germany, partly because Germany offered loans without the humiliating conditions of the Western powers. It was a fatal miscalculation. Germany lost, and the Ottoman Empire, already financially hollowed out, was dismembered by the victorious allies. On November 1st, 1920, though the Ottoman Sultanate was abolished, 600 years of continuous power ended not by conquest, but by compound interest. The Ottoman story carries a lesson that every great power in history has eventually been forced to learn. When you borrow to fight wars you don't just risk losing the war, you risk losing the empire. Rome debased its currency to pay its armies. The Ottomans borrowed from European banks to fight European rivals. Britain borrowed to survive two world wars. America now pays more in interest than it spends on defense. The mechanism changes across the centuries. The outcome never does. The empire that cannot sustain its finances cannot sustain itself. And in 2026, as the Strait of Hormuz disrupts the energy markets that power the Middle East, as Turkey navigates between NATO and BRICS, as a region that the Ottomans once ruled fragments further. The ghost of Ilti Sitinfik is not as distant as it seems. Subscribed to Empire Collapse, because the most powerful empire between Europe and Asia was brought down not by swords, but by a dead administration, in a room in Constantinople.